He took my head and he pinned it against the dining room table. He said, "You're going to drink tonight whether you want to or not." And I just looked up at him and I was like,
hello, everyone. Welcome to the Schooling Struggle podcast. My name is Todd, and I'm here with Pete. Pete, say hello.
What is up, everybody? What's going on over in the Seattle area today, Todd?
Well, Peter, it's dreary and gray, like most people would probably expect it to be near Seattle. How about you? What's going on in your neck of the woods?
All is well. In the thick of the holiday season, my 6-year-old daughter is ridiculously frenetic about all things related to the holiday season, and she was just bouncing off the walls for the last 5 days. And my wife and I looked at each other yesterday, and we both go, "We're not gonna be able to do another month of this." So we're navigating that.
Huh, interesting. What's her favorite thing about Christmas?
Decorating.
Oh, yeah, I could see how that would be.
And you don't realize that someone at some point in your life taught you how to unpack things gently. So she's like pulling stuff out and breaking stuff and like unwrapping stuff. Like there'll be 3 Christmas balls wrapped up in like one piece of newspaper, and she'll pull the one Christmas ball out, and then the other 2 just fall out and smash on the floor.
Darn it. So she's breaking, is she breaking sentimental value at this point, or you keep those away?
A few.
Yeah.
But it's all part of the process.
Can't make an omelet if you don't break a few eggs. Interesting. Well, today is going to be great. We're going to, Peter schooled my struggles the other day on the last podcast, which would have been episode 3. I think we're already pushing into 4. This is awesome. And although Peter is very humble and believes that potentially he's had quite the easy life, I hope to see some of his struggles shine through here, because I know that you've pulled on one quite a few times, and I really am very curious about that high school experience. But to start it off, and I told Peter this before, but I think at least for me in the podcast, if we go too deep on something where I feel personally like triggered or I don't want to go there, I'm just going to say I don't want to go there. So know that if you hear me say I don't want to go there, then it's pretty much off the table till we talk about it in private. And I would extend the same to you, Peter. But where I would like to start is not at that high school moment, but I would be interested in knowing. I remember at one point you told me that that you had a pretty normal elementary life, a pretty normal life up until high school for most intents and purposes. And so kind of lay it out there, like I wouldn't go exactly from the womb like you took me, but like let's go backwards. Let's go from your first memory, and then let's start building on top of that notable mentions until we get to the middle school section, if that's a thing.
My very first memory that I can conjure up is, the majority of people on this podcast might not even, or listening to this might not even know what I'm talking about. But when I grew up, there was what was called a cable box. And it was this piece of metal that was about the same length or width as a laptop computer. And it had a little lever, and you'd slide it along the numbers, and the numbers represented the channels. And this thing had like a 25-foot cord on it. So it was essentially a remote before remotes were even invented. And I just remember being in the den in my house where I grew up in Holyoke, Massachusetts, before my younger brother was born. He's 6 years younger than me. And it was myself, my older brother, and my 2 parents sitting in the den on this really like shag 70s carpet, watching TV with the cable running across the floor, and us on the other side of the room kind of flipping through the channels trying to find something to watch. I don't remember much else about that.
Interesting. Huh. What's your brother's experience with the cable box? Have you ever talked to him about it?
So I have an older brother. His name is Dave. He's 3 years older than me. And my younger brother is Jay. He's 6 years younger than me. And no, I haven't brought up the conversation about the cable box with Dave in a long time. I don't even know if Jay was old enough to even remember the cable box, but yeah, that's what it was. And I remember when remotes first came out and what a big deal it was that you didn't have to have this cable box running across your living room floor, or the cable connected to the cable box.
That's interesting, because you and I are pretty close in age. And it seems like I always remember remote controls. I don't know why that would be, but
Well, my parents were Luddites and still are in many respects.
What does
So
that mean?
every Luddite is, oh man, I hope I get this right. It is someone who fears or avoids technology.
Oh, interesting. Nothing wrong with that. And so
Well,
they were late to adopt, basically, is what you're saying. Like, if they
yeah,
had
pretty
remote
much
control, it came in the
everything.
90s.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Are they still that way?
Um, my father is. My father is actually a trustee to a bank and still didn't have an ATM card
Wow.
because he just goes and cashes a check at the grocery store to get cash. So he's that way. Yeah, anti-phone. My mom is just doing what she can to be up to speed and to be in our lives. So if that requires getting a phone to get videos and pictures of our kids, her grandkids, she's all in on that. And yeah, she's got it figured out for the most part.
Cool. So the next step in the evolution after the cable box. Let's unwind that a bit. That way, how old do you think you were there?
Oh, 4?
Okay, so
Maybe?
let's go. Let's shoot 4 to 12.
4 to 12. So, as I said, I grew up in Holyoke, Massachusetts. It's funny. My name is Peter, and my younger brother's name is officially John, and my older brother's name is David. So John, Peter, and David, but my parents are the least religious or spiritual people you'll ever meet in your life. The city of Holyoke, if you're not familiar with it, is per capita the highest crime of any crime that you can think of. Holyoke has, at least in the state of Massachusetts. Yeah. So my dad grew up there when it was the paper capital of the United States. It was a huge paper and textile industry back in the day, and lots of factories and just a booming town. And some insane percentage of the Fortune 500 people in the United States lived in Holyoke, Massachusetts, just because of the booming manufacturing that was going on. And my father grew up in that era. His father owned a bar, and the bar never closed because the factories were pushing 3 shifts a day, and people would get off their shift and go to my father's bar or my grandfather's bar. And yeah, so that was how my father grew up. And all this to say that over time, the history of Holyoke is that the paper mill shut down, the textile industry shut down, and Holyoke was just a bunch of abandoned buildings and tenement housing, and really took a turn for, some would say the worst, but just kind of some rough neighborhoods. And my parents chose to send my brothers and I to Lutheran and Catholic school. So never attended church, wasn't
Never before that? Like suddenly you're just going to Lutheran school and Catholic school?
I started there in kindergarten. Okay. Yeah. And my parents, sent us all there so we wouldn't be in the public schools. And my father, when I got to about the age 13, he decided that it would be better for him and our family to move to a new town so he didn't have to pay for us to go to school. We went to public school at that point. So I started public school at my freshman year of high school. And those years of age 5 to 12 were just amazing years. I had 3 of my best friends now are from preschool. So we've managed to maintain these lifelong friendships. One of my friends moved to Ireland, and the 3 of us have just remained close. So I'm very, very fortunate in that I have some amazingly long-lasting and some deep friendships in my life. And I have those from all of my stops. I have those from where I spent the summers. I have those from college. I had them from different places I've worked and different places I've lived. Keeping in touch with people has always been super important to me.
That's really cool.
And
go ahead.
I was just say, as I get older now, I want to double down on all the people that I'm close with, and then start to let the fringe ones kind of go, because I've found that as far as the essential life that I'm seeking is to be in touch and to be in regular contact with the people that I hold most dear is a very important thing for me.
Well, that's pretty cool. So that's 5 to 12. So basically, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more to unpack there, but
So 5 to 12, played a lot of soccer, skied and snowboarded. I started snowboarding right when snowboarding kind of hit the market. It was only allowed on one trail on Sunday nights in the town where I lived. And over time, snowboarding became a very important thing to me.
Yeah.
And I love snowboarding. And we spent the summers. My parents would rent a house for a couple weeks in Connecticut, and I'd go down there and spend the summer near the water, which was awesome. Both my brothers have relocated down there. There's a bunch of uncles and aunts as well. So my family's kind of migrating down to the shore, and I moved the opposite. I moved up north to Vermont. But yeah, that was how I spent my summers. Just a really, really blissful childhood. My parents kept any bad stuff from us, and not always for the benefit. I was just a blissful kid. So when quote unquote bad stuff or real life stuff happened, we didn't know about it. I'm very close with my father now, but he raised us similar to kind of how they were raised back in the 50s. Was his job was to provide, and my mom's job was to be there for the emotional support, and he'll be the first to admit that. So we always had a roof, we always had clothes, we always had food. We were very, very blessed in that regard, and my mom took care of all the emotional stuff, and her world was raising these three boys.
Yeah. So it's still the same then, in a lot of aspects.
Since he's retired, he's opened up a lot more, and our relationship has gotten much deeper. His level of compassion, his willingness to express his love for us, his love for his grandkids, and yeah, I'm closer with my dad than I've ever been, which I'm incredibly grateful for.
Yeah, congratulations. That's cool. What would you say, if thinking back to those years, and then contrasting that against the fact that you told me that you didn't have many struggles growing up? Is there one struggle that you could think of during that time frame that you were like, man, that was probably that was one I could have learned from differently, or maybe you did learn to in real time?
Yeah, my dad was stressed out because of work quite a bit. He was a financial guy, and I didn't realize until much, much later in my late teens, early 20s, when one of my neighbors told me or asked me, "Do you know what your father does?" I said, "Yeah, he does financial stuff." And she's like, "Do you understand that he holds the financial well-being of every single person that you know, all of his siblings and all of his friends and family, and he takes on that burden every single day?" And I'm like, oh no, I've never thought about it in those terms. So when things were not going well, it wasn't that they weren't going well for him. They weren't going well for everybody that he knew, and he was responsible for that. And I never really thought to think about that. Friends and family would often tell me, "Oh, you're going to be just like your dad. You're going to get into business just like your dad." So that was kind of in the back of my mind that I would someday get into business. So we'll hold that. I'll come back to that piece if I remember later in the story.
Yeah. So dealing with the stress or watching your father, or I guess having an awareness that stress existed Monday through Thursday, would you say that was a point of contention for you, or was that like something maybe that shaped your expectation going forward? Like I know to stay away from you Monday through Thursday. I'll go over here to mom, right? And then.
Yeah, not so much. My dad is definitely a unique character in many, many ways. And we joke about it now. And my younger brother, in moving from one house to another, moved in with my parents with his wife and children. And he'll send videos of my dad doing stuff or saying stuff that is a riot if you know my father.
Yeah.
But I think, when you're a kid, things just are. And I didn't think deeply beyond, when my dad was paying bills, I gave him space, and I wouldn't really, ask him to do fun stuff if it wasn't, Friday or Saturday, but he was all in to do fun stuff on Friday and Saturday. And I didn't realize as a kid how much his work consumed him. And then when I kind of grew up and thought about what I might do for a career, one of my primary goals was to not let my career choices consume me in negative ways. So I learned a lot from that. And really, I think my father took a lot of pride in providing for us. Like that was where he found his fulfillment. And it's funny because I grew up thinking we were poor. Like we couldn't leave lights on. We couldn't take long showers. We couldn't talk on the phone for a long time. Like we had all these rules, and they were all money related. And my father, at least in my opinion, my father used money as his measuring stick, but he didn't spend money. My father didn't have fancy jewelry, didn't have fancy cars. We didn't go on lavish vacations. So it wasn't like he was saving money to spend it. It was just that's how he measured his personal score. That's what I believe. And I can remember my mother using some of the grocery money to buy us soccer cleats because there wasn't enough there for the soccer cleats. And looking back, there was plenty there for the soccer cleats, but that was just the dynamic of how my family worked. And we always had the smallest bottle of shampoo or the smallest bottle of, dishwasher detergent because that was just kind of the dynamic of my family. And it worked for all that time.
Yeah. The living situations you get, I mean, that just becomes your norm, I think.
Yeah. And then the other piece is I think my parents were ahead of their time in many ways, maybe without even recognizing it. So anyone that knows me well knows that I can go deep on my soapbox about processed foods and what they're doing to the health of human beings, especially in the Western worlds. And we didn't have many processed foods growing up. And it wasn't because my parents were anti-processed foods. It was just because we were three boys that were just eating everything in the cabinets every day. And my father would stop home from work every day and buy food for dinner and bring it home and cook it. It was whatever was on sale that day or whatever was fresh or whatever caught his eye. And our breakfast and lunch were kind of just the staples that were always in the house. And the only thing that we always had available to us was cereal and milk. So there was always a box of cereal and there was always a gallon of milk. And we went through a couple boxes of cereal and a gallon of milk a day, the three of us. But that's what I grew up on, was cereal and milk. And my mom didn't buy the sugar stuff. It was always, at the time it was Cheerios or Special K. But yeah. And now, buying fresh each day and buying whole foods is, we've learned, one of the best ways to sustain health and wellness. And that's what my parents have done their whole life. And even my father now, still every day, he drives to the grocery store and buys one day's worth of food and brings it home and he cooks it for my mom. And the two of them have subsisted that way as long as anybody's known them.
It's an awesome story. Good job. Good job on the old man. He didn't even know he was doing the cool thing. And look at that. He's put it right in you. He didn't even know it.
I know. And I didn't learn it until I married my wife, who my wife was given a cookie in her lunchbox every day. And then they had dessert every day after dinner. So her palate told her after a meal, you got to have a sweet.
Yeah.
And, that craving is real. And for me, it was never there because it was never an option. Like we had pie at Thanksgiving and maybe something at Christmas, but there wasn't anything there. And my parents didn't have a lot of strict rules on us. Like I could listen to any music I wanted. I could watch any movies I wanted. I would fill up I'm not even exaggerating when I tell you this. I would fill up an entire pillowcase of candy at Halloween and we could eat all of that in one night if we wanted. So that there wasn't any strict parameters on that. And, yeah, it was a great childhood. It was awesome. Yeah.
Sounds like it. I mean, yeah. The reason I asked you to do that was two reasons. One is I remember the first time I went to a therapist, she said, "Tell me about your childhood." And I was like, "Oh, it's pretty normal." And she's like, "That's what everybody says, but watch this." So we didn't get to. Obviously, I'm no therapist, but it was interesting. And the second part is because I wanted to kind of clear your mind before we get into the what is this major entry point of yours. So what I heard you say was I had a pretty good childhood, at least in your own terms, in your own recollection. I went to a Lutheran school or a highly segregated school, let's put it that way, for most of my schooling. And then it seems
Lutheran school through fifth grade, and then they switched me over to a Catholic school for sixth, seventh, and eighth.
Yeah, so you could say highly shielded. And then when you and then you endured that summer between there, and then you knew you were going to public school. And then this is where I want to get into this occurrence that happened with little Driscoll there. So let's do that.
So what you just said about normal families made me think of a comic I saw one time. It was a giant room, and there was a sign above the door that said something to the effect of, "This is the room for people that only come from normal families." And there was nobody in the room.
Right. And there's no waiting chair out front because there's no way ever in there.
Yeah. So my parents, because of what was happening in Holyoke, my brother got mugged. He got his bike stolen from him.
Oh, so
He was entering.
this was happening to the kids. Like it went from pretty good place to it's kind of shady, and then this is what like you experienced
Yeah,
those things.
it was and still is a pretty segregated city, but yeah, things were happening.
Oh wow.
Yep. And my brother was in high school at that point. He was in ninth grade, and some things were happening. My parents weren't comfortable with who he was hanging out with, where he was hanging out, and they decided to make a move. So they sold the house that we lived in Holyoke and moved to the town adjacent to it, which is on the other side of the Connecticut River, called South Hadley, which had a better reputation. And my parents built the house of their dreams and we moved there. And so it was only 15-minute drive from one to the other. But, for me at that time, not realizing I was venturing into a whole new world. And I played, as I shared in a previous episode, I played lacrosse in this town prior to moving there. And I knew some kids that were on my lacrosse team, and we moved to South Hadley, and I started South Hadley High School as a freshman on the first day of school.
And you knew those kids, like you played sports with some of them, anyways. That were at your school when you got there.
They were my lacrosse teammates. Yep.
Yeah. And so, how was the lacrosse situation? So the relationships through sports with those same people was that like just sporting buddies?
I was just an outsider. I was a kid from Holyoke. There was no lacrosse program in Holyoke, so I was just a kid from Holyoke that played on the team. I wasn't a good player, as I've shared many times over. I was the smallest, weakest kid on the team, so I didn't really have any pull or really have any garnered any clout in that regard. I was just a small kid on the team whose helmet was way too big and his pads and his gloves were way too big because they didn't make stuff small enough for me, even though I was in 8th grade.
Oh, you're just an awkward teenager, right? I mean, that's pretty much what it is. So tell me about this first day at school. Now, I've heard you say, you get there and there's like a group of kids and you go there and there's like a joke and you just, kind of force laughter. And then that's kind of when this situation unfolded. So tell us a little bit more about that if you want.
Yeah. So lacrosse team, probably 20 kids in the team. But when I got to school, I was actually really excited about moving. My parents built this beautiful home in this great neighborhood, and I was so excited about moving. And we got rid of all of our kind of our old beat up furniture. My parents got me a futon in my bedroom, which was cool, and got me a poster of Dee Brown and Michael Jordan that I could hang up in my new room. And I was so psyched. Dee Brown with the blindfolded dunk. And I was just really excited to move to this new town. And even though I didn't know many people in the town, that summer I spent a lot of time by myself, which was kind of cool. Taught myself how to juggle, and was just really anticipating, excited for the first day of high school. And I went to high school, and I'm just kind of walking around before the bell the first day, and I see my group of probably 8 of the kids that were on my team, and I walk up to them and just wanted to figure that was going to be my group of friends for the next 4 years, and just kind of stood there. And as I shared, they were making jokes, and I was just kind of laughing. And one of them looked at me and just did not have any interest in having me as part of that circle, like figuratively and physically. And I spent the next 2 years doing everything I could to try to garner the acceptance of a couple, just 2 or 3 of them.
Same crew, the same group.
Same crew. Yep. Yeah. Yep. And I mean, to their credit, or and looking back on it as an adult, like they were established. They didn't need me around, and why would they want to bother with me? I don't know what their deal was. Like, I don't know if they couldn't have felt threatened by me. I don't really know. I just think they looked at me just like this annoying little kid that was trying to tag along, and they weren't interested in having me there. And it wrecked myself. I had great friendships and nothing but positive vibes throwing through my mind and my body, and my elementary and middle school years. Those years went really well for me, and this was the first time that I was like, whoa, all right, like I don't really know what to do. So I went home those first bunch of weeks, and I would just cry and literally just swear at my mom. Why the F are you sending me to this effing school? I just want to go back to my old friends, and why do we have to be here? And man, now as a parent looking back on that, like, oh man, I just tore my mom in half, and I feel so bad about it now. But yeah, it roughed me up pretty good. And I think that that Napoleon complex, or whatever you want to call it, that I had from those days has been a major motivator and a major driver for me ever since to not be that.
You
And
ever talk to those guys? You still friends with any of those?
yes, yeah. So we ended up being cool by the time I graduated. Like, we were cool. We weren't best friends, but I'm pretty confident that we were good. One of my best friends ever, his name is Sean. He lived across the street from me, down a couple of houses, and I started hanging out with him my sophomore year. He's 3 years younger than me. So when he was in 8th grade, I was a sophomore year, and I started spending a lot of time with him. And then once I spent time with him, I started spending time with his peer group, and they totally accepted me. And I had a really enjoyable junior and senior year. Still had the issues with my physical size, and still lacked a lot of confidence, but at least I was around people that made me feel valued and loved. And that was huge. So trying to get the acceptance of those dudes who didn't really want to have me around became less of my focus. But when 2 years of my life was consumed by hating school every day, hating myself, and just wanting these dudes to like me, man, that is a lot of wasted energy. Holy cow.
When I think about schooling struggle, and I think about as these things come up and when we talk about them, the intent is to kind of have a way to teach other people maybe a different way, or how we can look back on it retrospectively and say, man, I could have done that a little bit differently, or this is accept what happens to you, but like, how do you move past that? Because it's 2 years of your life, right? I mean, you just said it. Like, I've spent 2 years that I didn't get any back, wasting all of this energy on something that I never paid me a return. So I wonder if you have ever had an opportunity, or if you ever explored it, like diving into that, wondering, like inquiring with those people, like, do you remember this happened? And like, like kind of go through it with them, or is that like leaning into that discomfort instead of just realizing that you wasted your time? I wonder if you ever had done anything around those lines.
Are you asking if I have reached out to those guys and had conversations around that?
I mean, that would be one way, or if just it came up in conversation or anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, for me, like, we were cool by the time I graduated, and that I didn't want to go there.
Yeah.
I just didn't have the self-confidence to go there.
Yeah.
I probably would now. I don't know how much it would accomplish for me or for them. Yeah. I'm feeling okay about who I am and where I am, but I would definitely be open to that.
Yeah.
What I've kind of really focused my attention on is the people that have been awesome in my life and have been positive influences. How can I double down and invest in them versus trying to reconcile some of the actions of students or peers that didn't make me feel loved.
Yeah. Do you find yourself, and I know you didn't want this to turn into an interview, but now I'm so curious. Did you find yourself in the role you have now, or even in your parenting of your own child, do you find yourself creating inroads or spaces for people who you see going through a similar struggle of yourself? So like, if you're at school and you see a bunch of people bullying some other kid, you're like, hey, wait a minute, we can do this differently. Or
yeah, so I think that's where my strength as an educator lies, is that I once heard that school is full of a bunch of teachers who school went well for, right? So that school went well for them when they were young, so they went on to work in schools. And very few people who have had extremely negative experiences in school go on to make careers in schools. And I think, I think that is where I put a lot of my focus and energy on the students that I see. I have a brand new, a student who just moved to the town who's in 9th grade. And first day I went over to him, I said, hey, the toughest time of my life was when I moved towns and I started new as a freshman, and I hear you and I feel you, and I'll never walk a mile in your shoes, but I'm here to support you in any way that I can. And like, nobody said that to me when I was a freshman, and nobody understood. And I just felt like I was on an island, and I was, by myself trying to figure it out. And I was, but, I had people that loved me, but, nobody, but I was also at an age where I didn't open up about that stuff. I just yelled at my mom, and that was how I dealt with it. Yeah. And, sports and physical movement's always been an outlet for me. So I could go clear my head by go snowboarding or go play soccer or lacrosse or whatever it is that I was doing at the time. And, we could go on for a long time about this kind of stuff, but that I always say to my students, there is no problem that a good workout cannot cure. And for my life and for my life story, that is an absolute truth. That's how I've dealt with a lot of my stuff. I've never self-medicated. So I chose very early on that alcohol and narcotics was not going to be something I was going to do. I don't like the idea of being out of control. And I'm also really frugal with money, like my father. So I wasn't going to spend money on that or time on that. And it's a real interesting dichotomy because the crew that I ran with was all thick into that stuff, like partying and parties out in the woods and run from the cops. And I did all that with them, but I just chose not to drink. And when I got my license, I became the designated driver all the time. And so I wasn't against the use of that stuff. I just chose not to use it, but I ran with crews that did. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I bet that's actually very interesting, because usually you'll find somebody who's become that, serves that role because they went too far, right? Or something negative happened, and it sounds like you never.
Yeah, I mean, I always knew that alcoholism ran in my family, and my family is full of functional alcoholics. But that wasn't the main driver for me, and I don't know. I always liked being in control, and I really thrived on the reputation of being the only kid that didn't drink. Like I liked that.
It's funny. I think when I first met you, when I came to your house, I was underway, like the first time I've ever done keto diets, and so I had no refined sugar, no alcohol, nothing. And I remember I was asking you, like, where's a good bar to go to or whatever, because I wanted to see what the experience was like in that crazy little town that you were in. And I remember, I think, and I could be wrong, but I seem to remember you telling me, well, I've never drinking coffee, or never drinking alcohol, never drinking coffee. And I don't know if that still applies, but I thought, what a life would be like to never have experienced either one of those things, because, I mean, I just drink pots of coffee. It's ridiculous. So it was very mind-bending.
That's true. Yeah. I've never had a sip of alcohol, and I've never had a cup of coffee. I've never smoked anything.
That is amazing.
And when I tell my students stories about my high school experience, and I say, I was the only person at the party that wasn't drunk, or I was the only person that wasn't drinking, they're like, yeah, Mr. D, you're saying you're my teacher. But yeah, that's the truth. And that was my reputation, was like the kid who didn't drink. I remember I was a sophomore at a party, and there was an All-American lacrosse. Lacrosse is a big sport in my town, and there was an All-American lacrosse player there. And he was friends with my older brother, and he took my head and he pinned it against the dining room table. He said, "You're going to drink tonight, whether you want to or not." And I just looked up at him, and I was like, "No." And he's like, "No." He's like, "You're going to." And I was like, "Nope." And after a little while, he saw that I was for real, and then I was steadfast. And I think that in a way, that was a little bit of a switching point for me. Like, all right, these people know who I am, and this is where I stand, and they're not gonna try to force this on me anymore. And then when I became the DD every weekend, my friends loved it.
Oh yeah.
And I got sick of, like, no, you just expect I'm going to drive. Like, no, I'm going to go do something else this weekend. Nope, you're going to drive for us. So, yeah. And then when I got to college, it was the same thing. I have amazing friendships from college. Many of them still, I talk to on a very regular basis. And it was the same thing there. Like, they partied every night except Sunday and Tuesday. And I drove. And that's the world that I was around. And I have amazing friendships.
We have a long ways to go and not a lot of time to do it. I will say, this might be a part two. Actually, it will be. But I will say that one of the things that and I'd like to say it resonates the most with me, but it doesn't resonate because we came on two totally different paths, right? Like, I drink and smoke and I've done all the things in my day, but it really speaks a lot to the flavor of authenticity, I think, that comes across when I met you, and as I get to know you better. There's there's a level of integrity that I wouldn't even question. Like, oh, will Pete do it? No, Peter will definitely do it, right? Like, there's no way around that. And I think that that's really cool that you have fostered that within yourself. And three, or two, I guess, is the other one, is that you remember a point where you were so adamant about, I'm not going to do that thing, that something clicked for you, right? And I think that that's something to explore more with, like, how you teach your kids, or or how we are able to reach people who are in struggle, because there's definitely a moment where if you endure long enough, something will happen and it will switch over, and then you'll realize that your strength came through that thing instead of just, it was something that I had to uncover, right? So I think that's really cool.
Yeah. I remember going to college and being like, man, like, I want these kids to know that I'm cool because I run with kids that drink. I just don't drink. And like, how am I going to deal with, how am I going to prove myself that I'm cool enough to hang out with them? And I remember thinking like, oh, maybe I'm going to have to drink to get friends. Holy crap. Like I pulled it off in high school. How am I? And I just remember saying to myself, I remember laying in my bed freshman year, just like first week of school going, nope, just don't drink today. Like, it was almost like I was a recovering alcoholic, but I never had a sip in my life. Like, nope, just don't drink today. And really funny story. A bunch of years later, my senior year, my roommates had a banger of a party and kegs, the whole deal, and it got raided. And the cops came and took the kegs out of the house and then went back into the house to look for more kegs and left the kegs unattended in the front of the house. My friends stole them all back. And the cops were so mad because they left this party with no kegs. And all the people who lived in the house were sent to mandatory AA meetings. I lived in the house. I never had a sip of alcohol in my life. And I find myself at AA meetings for like 6 sessions or whatever, because that was like the protocol for getting in trouble with the school if you were caught with alcohol in your residence. So I might be one of the only people that that has gone to AA meetings that's never had a sip of alcohol in their life.
I don't even know what to say about that. Like, that's just icing on the top.
That is just it just speaks to like who I ran with, and I'd take a bullet for any one of those guys, and I know they would for me. Like that, just deep friendships.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I don't have any. I have very few friendships. Interestingly enough, one of the a remark that one of my best friends that I had since, I don't know, middle school to later in life, he actually lived with us for a bit, to probably into my 30s. He told me once, he said, we're really not friends. We're just more of acquaintances now. And that like crushed me. I was like, what the hell? Like, what does that even mean? Like, we've gone through decades together and now you're just like, nah. It was just so interesting. So to hear you say earlier about how, you're very intentional about the people you choose and pushing people who are not so much beneficial for you, or how you see them as benefiting you, to the fringes. It's a topic I would like to cover sometime, to see, to unfold that, how that feels for you and how you go about that, because it hit me as a very guttural, like almost like something was taken away from me. I was like, wow, you're taking a friendship and you're just chucking that out the window. And, so I don't know, but I thought that was interesting.
Managing relationships is schooling struggle.
Yeah.
Right?
It's rude.
Of all types. The toxicity, that's fascinating stuff.
No, it's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's really awesome. So cool. All right.
Good stuff. Thanks for hanging out tonight, Todd. Appreciate the conversation, and I'm looking forward to share more of my post-college years, which involved a lot of travel, a lot of, as my friends say, dirt baggery. Mm-hmm. I was my friend gave me the nickname America's Guest, because I had a rule that if you tell me where you live, I'm probably going to come visit you. And I took advantage of that. And I'm looking forward to digging in deep and sharing on some of that stuff going forward.
Awesome. Yeah. Peter, part 2 is going to be excellent. I'm excited for it. So thanks for sharing. Have a good night.
Good chatting tonight. Stay strong.
Yeah.
Peace out.
See ya.